Okay, this is the third video, and I'm going to break away from what I'm doing with the programming at the moment to put a concept to you, something that you've actually done in maths, called a sequence or part of sequences. And I'm going to be using the notation in my programming, so I want you to be aware of what it is. Now, something really interesting happened in the last video. I made a huge mistake. And I had to fix it as I was talking to you. That was just because I didn't fancy remaking the video again, so I fixed it in real time. But what I want you to take away is that that's what it's all about, making mistakes. It's okay to make a mistake, and in fact programming is about making mistakes or having mistakes and trying to prevent them happening. So you'll need to look at your work over and over again and try different things all the time until you've got rid of everything that could possibly be a mistake. They're not bad. I don't do this straight off. I obviously practice a lot before I actually give you any programming or lessons. It might seem that when I write a program, it's, oh, you should be able to do this straight away. That's not the case. It takes a long time. You are going to make mistakes. It is going to go wrong. You are going to get stuck and not know where to go. That's the whole point. The point isn't being able to create the program. The point is being able to know where to go to find help to solve the problem that you are trying to do. This does not come naturally to me, and it doesn't come naturally to anybody else. So that is the technique that you are really trying to learn. So don't worry if you make mistakes. Don't worry if you get it wrong. That's fine. Just know or know how and where to look to fix it. Knowing that you've made a mistake is the best part. Anyway, let's get on with this part. Here I've got a different word. This time I've used the word sequence, and I've got indexes above it. This time they go from 0 to 7. You should be familiar as to why I've labelled them 0 to 7 and not 1 to 8, for example. And you should know that at index 2 I've got Q, at index 7 I've got an E. In fact, I've got 3 E's. I've got an E at index 1, E at index 4 and E at index 7. Maybe we could do some sort of string manipulation to count the number of letters or the times letters occur. That's another string manipulation function, but we won't be doing that. I'm just looking at what we were doing in the previous lesson so that we can move on. So with this word sequence, let's say that I've got my random number generator and it chooses 5. So from the last lesson, I highlighted things in red. So I highlighted the index number in red and the letter in red. So if the random number generator picked 5, I've put the 5 in red and the n beneath it in red. Now what I want you to notice is that C, which I've coloured in blue, is at position 5 plus 1. So that is at position 6. So starting at n, adding 1 to it, I get to 6, and that's my value of C. Similarly, the E to the left is at position 5 minus 1, which is 4. If I just colour these red, that'll make a little bit more sense. That's my starting position, 5. Now, we call it hard coding if we use real numbers, and that's not going to help us a great deal because we don't know how long these words are going to be. I need a different way of saying things. So rather than use a fixed number from the random generator, I use a variable, meaning it can hold different values. That's what a variable means, such as n or index. Now, I use n in my examples because it's easier to write on paper than using the word index. However, when I'm in a program, I won't use n so much. I might use index to represent that number because in programming, I'm not sort of writing it on top of a string to give an example. Let me show you what I mean. So these are my two strings, sequence on the top and sequence on the bottom. The only thing that I've done is I've put the value n here to represent my variable, whereas I've written the word index down here, and to make it fit in that space I've had to make it really, really small. So using a word to represent the variable, when you're writing it out on paper, can be sort of painful. You're going to run out of space. So maybe you'll use n to represent it rather than a word. But in programming, I would probably use the word index because it would be better. It would represent what I was doing a lot more. It's the index. It's not the n. So let's take a look. So if I extended this, I could now write that my n, which if you remember is the value 5, and to the right of it, and everything to the right, I can put addition. So this number here is n plus 1. So it's that position plus 1. So if n was 5, this is going to be 5 plus 1, which is 6. Similarly, the one to the left is going to be n minus 1, which is 5 minus 1, which is 4. So it's a way of writing these numbers down using a variable. And you've seen that in sequences, and it's exactly the same thing. And again, I give an example below why I don't use the word index. I've had to really shrink things down to make index plus 1, index minus 1. And as you can see, I'm going to do index plus 2, index plus 3, and so on. And in fact, that's how we sort of write them down on paper. So this would be n. That's my random generator. It's generated 5. But instead of 5, I use n. Then the next one is n plus 1, which is 6. Then n plus 2, which is 5 plus 2, 7. Going to the left, I've got n minus 1. So that's 5 minus 1, which is 4. 5 minus 2, which is 3. 5 minus 3, which is 2. 5, and so on. So you get the idea there. And it's easier to write this down. And I use n because my random number generator generated 5 here. That was okay. But the next time I run through and generate a random number, it could be any one of these. And if it was, that's where I would place my n. And so the number to the right of it would be n plus 1. It's always going to be n plus 1 to the right, and it's always going to be n minus 1 to the left. So that's why I use n's in sort of writing down on my slides, but use index when I'm programming. But I'm going to be using this n and n plus 1 or n minus 1 in my programming just to make it neater, make it tidier, and I want you to understand why and where I've got that from. So have a go at the examples with this and then move on to the actual programming.